Hey everyone, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are almost at the end of an incredible month that we've dedicated to this theme, all about data, because we know for autonomous systems, it's always about the data. And we thank Carosoft, our month sponsor. Today we have with us, coming to us live from Singapore and the Singapore Air Show, and by the way, it's midnight there. This is Manuel Coelho. He is the CEO of Speedbird Aero. So great to have you, Manuel.
Thank you, Don. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone.
So I guarantee everybody, we are going to have some choppy connections. Just bear with us. This is what happens when you're a jet setter and coming live from all over the world like Manuel. But, Manuel is no stranger to this show. In fact, he was on in January of 2023, our very first show ever with AVSI, with Yoav Amitai from L-Site. So we'll drop that link if you missed that show. Go back and watch it. It was a classic. I think for us, it broke like all records in the number of views. So well worth watching. But Manuel, we've got you back. So thank you again. And what I want to do is make sure that folks that aren't familiar with you know a little bit about your background. So can you give us that maybe 30-second elevator pitch of, what your background is?
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm an international business person, right? I work with disruptive industries. Literally, I did for the first 13 years of my career telemedicine for aviation. So we provided telemedicine medical services for aircraft all over the world, and then moved on to telemedicine real equipment, where I met my partner and co-founder Samuel Salomon. He was an engineer, working with me in solving the telemedicine problems, which is making software control hardware at a distance. And our office was at the Scottsdale Airport in Phoenix, right, in the Phoenix metro area. So we learned about drones from there since 2011. We've been, fascinated by the world of drones and how to use drones to actually bridge the gaps, the healthcare deserts where people could not get access to vaccines, medications, exams. So that's how we started, and that's our background. We started Speedbird to bridge that gap and use drones where the telemedicine advice would reach, right? The exams medicine was hard to do it. So we needed a physical aspect. And we equate that to the new world of virtual orders, right? People ordering online, but they still need to get something physical at home. So that's where we're very excited about having a drone delivery company, a drone logistics company to get things to you when you need the most.
And you set up shop in Brazil, but you're clearly a global company. I remember when we spoke last year, and I wrote an article about this. Opened up a presence in the United States as well. Clearly, you're in Singapore now because you have some clients there. You work with Skyports on ship to shore deliveries. You're in the UK. We're going to talk about all this. But before we do, Manuel, I know we have a really cool video that gives a great overview of what Speedbird is doing. So let's go ahead and roll that video, and I'm going to have you talk over it and explain what we're seeing here.
Oh, absolutely. This is our operations with one of the biggest labs in Brazil, taking medication. This is in Brasilia, in the capital of the country. And then we moved to, very, very interesting, right? Anybody probably should know Scalpa Flow, very traditional area with the Second World War, beautiful, beautiful countryside. I definitely recommend touristic, trips there. But the Royal Mail, for people that live there, this is a reality, right? The weather is challenging, and sometimes the ships that take the mail from one part of the islands to others, would be delayed because of windy conditions and the sea conditions. So this was, a very ingenious work from the Royal Mail and Skyports, and we're very proud and honored that they chose Speedbird's aircraft systems to do that. So that's what we do on a daily basis in Orkney. And from there, we moved with Skyports to something that's the first in the world, right? This is the first time a water company and put in our drones, we actually implemented a system for analyzing the quality of water real time from a drone. This is not to collect the water and take it for a lab. This is actually doing the analysis real time from the drone's connectivity to the location. This is in Israel, first actually departure from an airport in Eilat in the south of Israel. This is a daily delivery for the last 3 years with iFood. We deliver McDonald's and a few other major shops. This is the delivery now in a countryside in Brazil, in a big city for labs over the seas, right? So we have about a 40-kilometer BVLOS area in the city of Salvador. And it finishes up with Rio de Janeiro, one of the most beautiful cities that we have in the Brazilian, territory, where you can see the partnership with a beverage company, AB InBev, right? So taking beer and other beverages to people from the distribution center, cutting down the time that the people are supposed to receive their beverages. Obviously, this is the beginning, right? With
Yeah, I think Ambev is Anheuser-Busch in the United States. And so super cool. I know that's one of the largest beverage companies in Brazil. So super amazing that you're doing all this. Oh my gosh. So, when I was talking to Manuel before the show, and by the way, everybody, this is live. So just remember to jump in the chat, tell us, where you're from, ask Manuel questions. But getting back to, when I was talking to Manuel about this year and what he had going on, and we were looking at the dawn of autonomy and what was a good fit, Manuel picked all about data month because of everything they do. All of these use cases relies on data, including UTM. So what I want to do, there's so much we're going to talk about, Manuel, and I want to get right to the heart of this UAS traffic management that you're also doing. People know you for drone delivery. They may not have known, and I think they may have even known about the mail delivery in Orkney. They probably didn't know about the water, real-time water sampling that is, frankly, a first ever. But UAS traffic management and Speedbird Aero are not terms that people, at least hopefully before the show, but hopefully after the show, they will associate them together. Tell me about UAS traffic management and what you're doing in that space.
Well, that's a great question. We've been working in Israel since 3 years ago with Highlander, one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, UTM, unmanned traffic management system to people. The project is very advanced. We had a chance to work with other great companies, but Highlander is very advanced in Israel in doing what they're doing, in other parts of the world as well. They're a global company and, made us realize the importance of the UTM, including that video where we are taking off from Ramon Airport in the south of Israel, going to the lot, a 17-kilometer BVLOS flight that we did in a border town. We were 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers away from Jordan, and the aircraft is flying 17 kilometers BVLOS from an active runway. So that was actually possible because of our integration and our command and control software connected to the UTM and being able to coordinate the airspace so we can fly it safely and steer away from any danger.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are not familiar with Highlander, about 2 years ago, I was part of the Edge 2022 event, which is co-located with CES. And from the stage in Las Vegas, I flew a drone in Israel using L-Site's command and control, but Highlander's UTM system. And that was wild. I'm on the stage in Las Vegas, Nevada, commanding and controlling a drone that was flying in Israel. So Manuel, you're working with Highlander. Are you using then this UTM system and the data uh, from Brazil, for example, to fly in, I don't know, pick a location? Or are you, for example, in Singapore right now with Skyports and that ship to shore delivery system you're putting together? Do you have some kind of command center or group there that is riding on that UTM backbone?
It's a great question. When in Brazil, we are the manufacturer and the operator. So we do have our own UTM solution that we are integrating with the Brazilian government, gradually developing here. We have a few other big partners like Embraer, Artec, which is the Brazilian arm of Embraer that writes the ATM codes, right, for the Brazilian government. So we are heavily involved in becoming a service provider for UTM with the support of Highlander, with support of other companies that we are actually collaborating around the world. Here in Singapore, Skyports is the operator. They use our systems, but our systems are connected to another UTM here locally in Singapore. Not only that, our systems are also connected to marine traffic because we do actually go to the ships, right, automatically. So you click the ship, it finds a route, it knows the airspace as well because you have a UTM connection. So it steers away from both, dangers, understanding where the ships are so you can go to them and do the work or collecting, taking cargo, but also ensuring that the airspace is protected and we are working safely.
Wow. So what that tells me right there is you've put together an entire ecosystem that's really plug and play and can be integrated almost anywhere. So I want to shift for a second from UTM and kind of software applications. We can get back to that, Manual, if you want to, highlight more things there. But I want to talk about the hardware because throughout the video we saw in the beginning of the show, it was highlighting the drones that you're creating, and you've had a lot of first evers with those drones, with ANAC, which is the Civil Aviation Authority in Brazil. And most recently, your DLV4, which I think is your eVTOL. I believe we have, there she is. Tell us about what's going on with your hardware and this latest certification, which is really big.
Yet is the first commercial operations that we are allowed to do. Brazil has a slightly different system that they developed, which is quite advanced, that allows us to actually work, with companies and providing, but we share the data real time with the regulators. They come to inspect the aircraft, the flights, etc. And then we migrate towards a few months of real flights and then until we reach the type certification. It's still under 25 kilograms maximum takeoff weight. So the requirements are not as stringent as, for example, another class of aircraft, but still a very big thing, big accomplishment to ensure that, the aircraft are flying safely under the same systems that we use at Speedbird. So our operators also that used to fly multi-rotors, now they're flying eVTOLs safely and using the same connectivity, the same partnerships that we have around the world, as I just mentioned, in UTMs and developing our own systems as well to operate in Brazil. And outside, we very much look forward to supporting the operations of our partners, and that's why shows like this is very important because we can actually talk to people directly, answer questions. I see a few questions coming here as well, which is great. And as you mentioned, the hardware is key, and we use that data on daily flights, sharing the data from our systems here with the Civil Aviation Authority. I don't think anyone, or maybe some authorities do that, but we're able to actually share our dashboard with the regulatory entities here so they can actually track it and see how Speedbird is doing and how safe of operation. So they can even follow the flights, not on command and control, but they can actually see where the aircraft are, what the aircraft are doing. You can see the hours of flying, and you can see any warnings that we receive from the aircraft or the operators, right? So they're able to actually map out and say, well, the connection timeout here, we had issues with this component or that component. So that type of transparency and honesty is very well
Yeah, you said the word transparency there, and I was going to actually mention that because I imagine that is why you've had such great success with ANAC and all these other civilization authorities. The fact that you're really an open book when it comes to your data as to what is exactly happening. Now, before we get to Marshall, we have a really good question from Marshall Hobbs about your water sampling, which we'll get to. I want to highlight that this the name DLV is for delivery, and you have the DLV 1 and 2, and those are quads, rotorcraft.
exa rotors, multi-rotor, yeah.
Multi-rotor. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I know we talked about those and we had some images in the last show and we saw them in the video. But the DLV1 is the smaller one.
Correct. These are for home deliveries that will do the last mile. Most of the time, this is the best aircraft for that. One delivery of a meal, hamburger, etc. When we do grouping of meals, for example, for iFood, which is our biggest food delivery companies, we do multiple meals that go from the shopping mall to a strategic distribution areas around the city. So Brazil, it's very common to have delivery personnel on bikes and electric scooters. So we are taking advantage of the vast resources of the country in terms of employment, right? So we makes it a lot cheaper to just do 80 to 90% of the route, so people do not risk their lives actually going through the major arteries of the city. But it goes from a shopping mall where the supply is right of cargo and food, clothing, etc., and it goes to these specific areas of the city where from there in the hubs these motorcycle deliveries or scooter deliveries are delivering to people's homes. And when we can, we actually get to a residence or a development area that has actually a common drone port that we can actually deliver the cargo there inside the gates, right, because of security.
Yeah, yeah. So, fun fact, everybody, I actually wrote an article for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine called Drone Delivery Takes Off in Latin America. Now, it features several companies, but Speedbird Aero was one of them. And Manuel, in researching that article, that was really the first time I got to fully appreciate the dangers of regular, traditional deliveries in Latin America, including Brazil, the motorcycles you're speaking of, and the death and accident rates that are through the roof. And also the infrastructure isn't awesome from the road standpoint. So to be able to fly over all that is really changing the game. And so we'll drop that link so people can read that article. We've got that, and I'd love for you guys to check that out as well. But solving a really, really big problem there. So tell us a little bit more about your cloud control station, right? So you're developing a UTM, you've got the hardware that we talked about, but all of this is backed up by, software. And as you said, in Brazil, you have a control station. Tell us more about that.
Well, this is all due to Samuel, my co-founder and great friend that we work together. He has done so well, for example, coming up with the software that is actually in the VA for telemedicine, Veterans Affairs. If you go to the VA today, the software that was there was actually developed by him, and then DoD and
Wow.
others. They use that, user experience, the encounter software. So he has a very long history of friendly user interface, right? Safety, obviously, cybersecurity, ensure that you have no more than what you should have in there, right?
Yeah.
But we also learned a lot from operating ourselves, drinking our own Kool-Aid, as we say it, right?
Yeah.
But also listening to our customers, listening to people that are operating outside, and each area has different requirements. For example, in Israel today, we're flying because we have been able to implement certain things that, for example, when GPS jamming happens, which happens unfortunately now more often than before
Yeah.
due to the conflict, right? The drone doesn't fly away, right? So we have Samuel has to develop inside the rules of our software, image recognition, the drone can fly itself back, right, safely, because obviously the routes are pre-planned. It's a little
Yes.
bit different than dynamic routing where the operator, the pilot can fly randomly. We teach the routes to the drone, and the drone through AI will recognize it, right? This house is what this location is, and then it can fly without the GPS slowly, right? We're still developing the technology farther and farther, but the truth is today the drone will not run the risk of flying away. Coupled with that, Samuel just installed with the team an anti-jamming, device in
Wow.
Israel with our drone, so we can actually protect it. So it's all about how much you control of our technology. We
Yeah. So, well, it sounds like the norm for deliveries, whatever you're delivering, is that folks plan and define some specific air corridors. There's predefined routes, and then they're all strategically connected with drone ports, which, by the way, the United States is just figuring out what does a drone port even mean. And there's a FAA request for information out there. Everybody had posted that on LinkedIn. But tell us more about these drone ports.
Here in Brazil, the Civil Aviation Authority has mandated 8x8 for us, right? To keep safe, distances where we have to have some protection in there, and we can operate pretty much from anywhere, everywhere, at night as well. We have the permission to fly at night. The drone ports just ensure that no kids, people, animals are approaching it, so you can have a secure, operations without any risk to others, right? So we want to ensure that this is done as we gain more and more data. So we talk about
Yep.
data, right? And then we can eliminate certain, for example, the size of the drone port. 8x8 meters is a lot. It's not,
That is big. Yeah. So wait a minute. Are there like charging stations? Like what is it's not just like a big circle with a landing X in the middle. I mean, this is relatively significant piece of infrastructure that might be
Yeah, we
modular.
can find, depending on the aircraft, we can fit 2 or 3 landing pads, right? The drone port is just the area
Yeah.
or where you can actually land. And then the drone pads are, we have an Aruco marker that the drone reads it. One of the things is GPS, the global positioning systems in the southern hemisphere is not as precise as the northern hemisphere. So
Mm-hmm.
we have, depending on the time of the day, a few differences, right? In reading the geopositioning. So you can see a meter this way, 30, centimeters here. So the Aruco marker can actually ensure that when the drone gets in the vicinity, even though if it's off by a meter, 2 meters, etc.,
Yeah.
it can actually, oh, let's adjust automatically, and then every time lands exactly where the marker is supposed to be. So that's what we call a drone pad. So we have the drone port, which is the area, and then the drone pad.
Okay, so wow, there is a lot going on there. Now, tell you have a lot of partnerships, Manuel. We talked about your hardware, we talked about software, we talked about UTM, we talked about these drone ports and your ops center. But you've got a lot of partners to make this all happen. We mentioned a couple already, but you guys recently signed a memorandum of agreement with Sinai, Symantec, and can you tell us, I believe we have a picture of this, of you guys, signing the document or, showing this off. Tell us what we're looking at here and why this is so important.
Aeronautical institutes in Brazil, supported by the Air Force and the Brazilian government. So we were there with the president of Brazil. We were there with a few other, and was selected as a drone company to be part of this massive undertake. Now converting inside an active international airport, an area for Speedbird to install themselves ourselves there, right? Do research and development, but also to operate from an airport. So it doesn't sound like a big deal for a lot of people that have been doing it. I think other companies may be doing that already. There's one or two that I know, but for us this is huge because if we now taking the necessary steps, we have shown over 5 years now that we can operate drones safely, that we can actually um, they're not going to fly away, that we can actually coordinate safe operations even from within an international airport. This is the next step, because you have a lot of cargo that comes into an airport or has to leave from an airport, right? Either has to arrive, that's critical time, the SLAs, medicines and vaccines and other things that have to be leaving or arriving at an airport. So
Yeah.
we figured out this is a good use for our technology as well. But more important is what this group, this institute does in terms of research. For example, they do all the research for Ford in the world. They have about I think 1,500 engineers working on software, working on solutions. There are a lot of big companies that use them for this type of research. HP is there, so we can use, for example, multi-million-dollar printers, 3D printers like we couldn't even dream about, testing new composite materials,
Yeah.
for resistance, for vibration and other things. So it's like Speedbird as a startup would never be able to have access to this in a short term. So with these guys, we can actually take the next step in advancing our research and development. And as I mentioned, the idea is not to have the best technology in the world. I think we leave that to the military. We leave that to a lot of the folks that spend a lot of money on this. For us, is the right size it, right? What mission the drone has to do and what costs. And if we can make this cost effective to
Yeah, to your earlier point, Manuel, I'm not aware of very many companies, drone companies that are actually working out of an airport. Like I'm tracking airports implementing drones, for example, for airplane inspections or flight line inspections, possibly mapping, in between operations and things like this. But I agree with you, the significance of not only this powerful partner that you now have, but just the fact that you're operating from an international airport, delivering things to and from there is hugely significant. So congratulations on that. That is amazing. And obviously, very cost effective, much safer than what we're seeing out there right now. So congratulations on that. Let's talk about the water sampling, because I kept Marshall at bay forever, so I know I'm skipping around a little bit here, Manuel. But this water sampling is really important. It's also another first for Speedbird and frankly for the world. So the question from Marshall Hobbs is it water sampling or more along the lines of a sea state analysis? Are you so that those are the two questions basically.
Well, I'm not the expert in what the probe does, and I'm actually obtaining more and more data from the water companies, Northumbria Water Group in Northumbria in the UK, nearby the Newcastle region, where they spearheaded it. Recently, there was a big reports on it, in a lot of discussions on the quality of the water in the UK. Geolocation, lat launch, and they send it to the lab so you can actually have a reading on the quality of water. In this situation, is real time. The drone is connected to the internet, right? Whether through our friends at Well Site, we have Well Site inside our drones as well. So either is radio, Wi-Fi, 3G, 5G, 4G, SATCOM, they enable the connectivity, which is fantastic, right? So that for us it was a big step. But through the same channel, the sound, the probe is connected, so it's sending real time data to the water company. So
So
the points of
is it
collection,
like a lake? Is it, I guess the open sea? What water exactly are they sampling at this time? I think that's also kind of a piece of the question here. Is it a lake or is it sea or both?
both. We're seeing them
Wow.
using both lake, ocean, obviously in the river mouths, right? In the, when it comes out. So they're doing. I have a few videos as well. I can share anyone who wants it. It's quite cool. The drone actually does all the this automatically. They set up the points of analysis. It's not collection anymore. We call collection, but in truth is actually lower without about a meter and a half from the surface, and then stabilize it to do the rounds and collect this vital information, but real time. I hope it answers,
That
but
is,
I can get more data as well because
yeah.
the water scientists will know why this is important more than I do.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is all about data this month. And, like I said, people, I think, traditionally have associated Speedbird with drone delivery. But here's an example of it's literally data delivery, with this new application that you've been able to add this sensor to your drone. Now, which drone are you using for this manual? Are you using all three of them or just like one in particular?
The LV2, because we're talking about 30 knots of wind, right? So really bad weather sometimes in the northern part of the UK, Scotland, etc. So this is the drone that has been actually tested in water, in rainy conditions and up to 30 knots of wind.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about weather and obviously the stability of that drone to be able to handle delicate packages and also sensors like what we're talking about here. Obviously is incredibly incredible. I was just at Geo Week in Denver, Manuel, and there's of course entire companies that are dedicated to having those stabilizers, that you can put on an aircraft or any vehicle for this purpose. So pretty cool. You
And
design.
that's a cool thing that I want to add. I didn't mention that for the drone ports, right? They have
Yeah,
weather stations.
they have weather stations on the drone ports. Wow. Well, there was a lot of foresight to add weather stations to these drone ports because that's something that my buddy, and I know you've met him, who hasn't met him? Don, the weather Don Berghoff, right from True Weather Solutions, probably warms his heart to know that you guys have weather stations on your drone ports.
No, we're talking to them, and there's so many things that they're doing, and other companies as well. We have to get a shout out to the industry.
Yep.
There's no competition here. There's no competition. We need to create an industry, right? There's respected that manned aviation and unmanned can coexist, and this data, because we're flying below 5,000 feet, right? Weather data is not reliable, even with the best efforts of our algorithms that the weather stations use. But and I learned a lot from True Weather and other folks as well who've been talking about it, and hopefully we can work together in transforming every drone port in a weather station, reliable weather station for drone operations, but also for public service. I heard anything from surfers in the beach that want the data, but also the city officials, because landslides and flash floods, etc. So having the micro data, what's happening around the city more precisely, because of our drone ports are strategic located around the cities, can be quite useful to the public.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about even like youth sports. If it's lightning out, like the kids on the lacrosse team, they're not running around with their metal lightning rod sticks. So good stuff. Let's see. Oh, Bronwyn Morgan's out there saying Don the weatherman, and Marshall said basically that answers my question. Thank you. So thank you for posing it, and thank you all for being such an active chat today. We love you guys. Keep all the questions and comments coming. Let's talk about Singapore because we've got a great picture of you and your lovely wife, Eloisa. Was this taken like yesterday or the day before? I mean, this is just like fresh off the show.
It was yesterday, first day of the show. Today was the second.
Okay, and
Yeah,
this is the Singapore Air Show. So, what do I tend to do live streams from shows. Obviously, I didn't get the chance this year to head to Singapore. My next international trip is Amsterdam in April for Amsterdam Drone Week. We're super excited about that. But What are you seeing in Singapore, Manuel, when it comes to the drone industry, and in particular, how they're using data? So, Singapore is one of those countries that it's small enough that the government can have some level of control over what happens and help shape things like the drone industry, or even I've seen some great Netflix shows on, fitness and kind of health and what they're doing in some of those arenas. But that aside, so what are you seeing in Singapore right now that's really exciting from the drone industry and kind of data sharing standpoint?
traffic and the air traffic, right? In our solution, but also anyone that can operate here will have access to that. And obviously the government is investing. They have a great company here called ST Engineering that they have great drones as well. So it's not only Speedbird. We support them, when we need, for example, with our delivery systems, etc. But it's good to see that, at the end of the day, we're not competing. We're creating a new market, right? And if this goes well in the one of the largest sports in the world, it's absolutely amazing to see the operations. Tomorrow I'll be spending some good time taking good notes, learning, because we, as an operator in Brazil, we want to take this to other locations as well, right? Because this is very useful. Ships that are still at sea, yet to come into port before they dock, before it saves a lot of time getting documents, passports, um, collecting, for example, oil samples and ballast water samples, etc., before they're given the right to come into a domestic port. So this can help in very many ways. We're very much looking forward to unlocking. So, yes, we are fully focused in delivery and logistics, and we believe that home deliveries will be happening soon. Very excited to see what's happening in the U.S. as well, in Texas. Hopefully, more states will pick up as well. And our friends, drone delivery companies that are doing the phenomenal work, continue to expand. We'll soon be in the US. We're working on that as well, take our little fair share. Um, but at the end of the day, to show the data, the hours of flying in very different conditions. If you can land on a ship, or if you can actually winch something down a ship, you can do this safely on a backyard in a house, and
Yeah, I mean, you don't need an 8x8 drone port to make all of this happen. So the fact that you're able to land on ships and do this in Singapore is really key. So super exciting there. So much going on. Like we said, I mean, you've been in Israel for a while now. Obviously, started in Brazil, doing things in the UK, Singapore, coming to the US. Where did I miss? Because I feel like I don't want to let any cats out of the bag, but you've made some international trips, other ones that I'm aware of, Manuel, and I don't know if you want to share anything else of some of these other countries that you're working with.
well, Argentina was an exciting country for us as well. We have a few big projects coming up with very big partners that want to really invest in the technology, right? And they know, everyone that's working with us for the last 5 years, and we have very good companies, very big companies. Some of them are in the video. It's quite exciting to see that they're here for the long haul. It was not the marketing. It was not for the flash news. Some companies have been
Or like, hey, we
quiet.
delivered one Pepsi, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And I think you're referring to Ambev. That's an Anheuser Busch. I mean, that's a big
correct,
company. Yeah.
correct. And they
Uh,
know this is going to come in the future, right? For them, half a ton of beer or other beverages will be important, but they know it has to start with 5 kilos, 8 kilos, 10 kilos, and then grow to what they need. So this will happen, and they know that. But they also know it's easier to start with a smaller drone, less risk. Looking at the risk analysis of the operations. But it's very exciting. These companies are are supporting us, and there's more companies now. They're looking at, for example, the ESG agenda as well. They're but not just from a marketing perspective. They
Right,
really
right.
want to make an impact on how to, and it's not just the environment only. People won't talk about ESG. We're talking about, the safety of operations, right? Looking at the social aspect of it. As I mentioned, a country like Brazil with 12,000 deaths from motorcycles, and vastly driven by deliveries.
Yes.
So there's a problem. There's a cost to it.
Yeah, there is.
2.5 million handicapped in 10 years is an absurd amount of people,
Oh my gosh,
right?
you
And,
just
and,
gave
and
me like,
so,
I'm like not joking, you just gave me chills. That is like, that's awful.
and we see this daily. I drive around Brazil when I'm there.
Unbelievable. So solving a lot of society's problems with drones and the data and also the goods that they're delivering is part and parcel, no pun, actually pun intended, of what Speedbird Aero is doing on a daily basis globally. So we're getting short on time, and I want to make sure that we didn't miss anything you wanted to cover, Manuel. What else before we close out? And then I want to ask you, you're in Singapore now. Where are you going to be next?
Well, from here, I go to Ireland to meet with, the Civil Aviation Authority. They have an event there. I was invited to be part of it, meet our good friends from other companies that are doing great work. I think Manoel will be there, Wing from Google. We're going to be learning from them, ears open, eyes wide open as well, to learn and see, and cooperate. I think the idea is to cooperate. Then from
Oh,
there, go to Portugal. We'll open up the company, most likely in Portugal, to enter the European Union and the EASA rules. So hopefully this will come. We're considering now Portugal or Ireland. Obviously, the UK with Brexit is a little bit different.
yeah, yeah.
So we are working on that, and there is a possible. I see the questions here. There's a possible project in Canada that's very, very, very exciting, but it's not done yet. So we are still fighting for it, and that can be quite. We have good people there, good partners that we're working closely with. Hopefully, in the near future, we can announce something that can be newsworthy. In India, unfortunately, I was supposed to be in India 2 weeks ago for the Global Business Summit. The Indian government, actually, the Times sent an invitation, my ticket, everything, and I was barred from actually leaving Brazil because I didn't have yellow fever vaccine. Because I grew up in the US, I didn't have yellow fever vaccine. In India, because we're leaving from Brazil, you have to have it. So unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go, but there's a very big scene in India. It's a country that I'm very excited to,
Yes.
and hopefully we'll be there supporting, the efforts. There are a lot of good companies arising. So it's good to see. It's good to see an industry taking shape. And one of the things you mentioned here about Singapore show, I didn't see a lot of presence from drones. I think the hype finally has settled, right? And we see actually serious companies now. They know the place, they know where our discussions need
Yeah, I think we're seeing that everywhere. I think that's a great term you used, settled.
more tangible now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more tangible. It's settled. You're starting to see kind of the cream rise to the top, if you will. And Speedbird is one of those companies. So, by the way, everybody, if you weren't tracking, Manuel is going to be part of our Law Tech Connect workshop this year at AUVSI Exponential. He's not surprisingly, on the global drone regulations panel, because of his wide breadth of experience working with all of these different civil aviation authorities that we were just talking about from all of these countries. So really excited to see you in person in San Diego. Everybody, if you haven't signed up for that yet, please do. It does include the Expo Hall Pass. So sign up for my workshop. You get to wander the hall for 3 days for free. So, and we're having a networking event on Sunday night where hopefully Manuel and some of our other faculty will also be in attendance. You can get to meet them in person. All right, we are at time. So any last comments, and how can people reach you?
Well, thank you, and sorry for the enthusiasm. Sometimes I tend to talk a lot about drones and the successes of that we see around the world, and it's very exciting. And thank you, Don, for the opportunity and everyone here involved. You can reach me at any time. My phone number, it's always open. Honestly, I like to talk to people. I like to make sure that I hear the experiences and how we can help and how we can be helped, right? It's amazing what comes sometimes when you're open to listen. So my number is, I can put in there as well, in the US, 1-602-561-0426. So at any time, send me a text message. Go to my LinkedIn, Emmanuel R. Coelho, MANOELRCOELHO, and you can see my reach out, and it will be a pleasure and an honor to be talking about this and figure out ways to partner. But thank you, Don.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Uh, Clearly, all about data today with Speedbird Aero. We learned so many more things from our last show to today, and you've made such great progress. So proud of you. Can't wait to see what else is going to happen in the coming year, and can't wait to see you again in person in San Diego in April. So in the meantime, have a great trip. The remainder of your trip in Singapore and all your other travels, Manuel. We are out here, everybody.